Good evening, viewers. You're watching the debate with me, Shavin Sen. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we put the spotlight into what's really happening in West Asia. As Israel has opened up a new front altogether, can the world really handle another war which has now started? What are the repercussions of it? How exactly will the Middle East really respond to it? Remember, India has made multiple efforts of bringing in dialogue amongst these warring nations. But the reality is this, ladies and gentlemen, we're dealing with several rogue states. And can they really be reined in? That's our focus on debate number one. At 8:30 this evening, at 8:30 this evening, ladies and gentlemen, once again, there is a fierce political face-off between Y.S. Jagan Mohan Reddy and Chandrababu Naidu. Chandrababu Naidu says that Jagan is lying, and the fact that he does not want to declare his religion while visiting Tirupati has now led to a massive political face-off in the state of Andhra Pradesh. That's our second debate coming up at 8:30 tonight. At 9 p.m. with my colleague Abhishek Kapoor. The big debate over what's really happening in Karnataka with the CBI not being allowed to carry out with an investigation. The Karnataka government has withdrawn the general consent. Is Siddaramaiah really afraid of a full-fledged investigation to be carried out? So far he was saying that he has nothing to be afraid of. If that's the case, then why not allow the Central Bureau of Investigation to step in? That's the debate at 9 p.m. tonight. And then we also have yet another attempt that has been made to perhaps once again ensure that one particular community is on the edge, only because of the fear-mongering that still continues. And why should anyone have a problem with the statue of Rani of Jhansi? That's the debate coming up at 9:30 this evening. Let's now take you through the headlines we're tracking on this Friday evening.
I have a message for the tyrants of Tehran. If you strike us, we will strike you.
Israel escalates its barrage on Hezbollah's military capacities. Netanyahu says that his will go out on all fronts to defend itself from Iran's proxies. Amid the Tirupati Prasad adulteration row and charges against former Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Jagan Mohan Reddy has cancelled his visit to the Tirupati temple, accuses Naidu government of stopping YSRCP workers from visiting the temple. Amid the Muda scam heat up, the Karnataka government has withdrawn the open consent to the CBI to conduct probe within the state. Does the CBI make Siddaramaiah nervous? A political tussle has erupted over the reinstallation of Rani of Jhansi statue at the Shahi Idgah Park. The Shahi Idgah committee says that the Waqf land is encroached. Debating tonight at 9:30 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, a little less than a year ago, Israel witnessed one of the deadliest attacks carried out by Hamas terrorists. The attack, in fact, has gone down as one of the worst attacks in human history. The scale of the death toll was unprecedented in Israeli history. On the expected lines, Benjamin Netanyahu's government launched an all-out attack to wipe out Hamas. A year later, much of the objectives perhaps have already been met, perhaps from the Israeli perspective. Hamas can no longer carry out another October 7th. In fact, that's not the end. Israel has now opened a new front, an all-out war with the Hezbollah. a militant group whose sole agenda is to wipe out Israel from the face of earth. For 18 years put together, the conflict has been on slow fire. Tehran has been instrumental in arming Hezbollah as well as the Houthis. Is the world really expecting Israel to be a mute spectator when they are being fired upon from all sides? Can the world really continue to look the other side when the culprit lies in one country? Today, in the United Nations faced the exact same question. One on hand, it had the Lebanese foreign minister pleading for an international intervention to stop Israel. On the other, it had a very aggressive Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, who said that for the security of his own country, he in fact is ready to go all out against all the terror proxies of Iran on each front. Netanyahu says that Hamas must go. It cannot be allowed to crop up once again, rearm itself and re-attack. Now, will his assurances be really enough for the world as Israeli tanks stand on the border with Lebanon, ready to move in at a moment's notice? Israel believes it needs no permission from the world to defend itself. But what does this essentially mean for the rest of the region and for the world? In fact, that's essentially been the concern for the longest time. Israel has made it abundantly clear that there can be no ceasefire when they're being fired upon. Israel also says that the Hezbollah has already violated as far as the resolution is concerned. With regards to Lebanon, Israel maintains that there is no reason why they cannot have a peace deal with them, but that can only be worked out if their soil is not being used by the Hezbollah. The question is, why is it no direct questions are being asked to the Iranians? Why is it that the world seems to be dragging its foot when it comes to dealing with Iran? That's the debate tonight. Take a look at this report first.
Smoke continues to rise from Lebanon after Israel ramped up its airstrikes across the country. In what is being called the next phase of the war, Israel so far escalated its strikes on Hezbollah's military capacities and its top commanders in Lebanon. As per reports, over 700 people have been killed in the strikes that have jolted Lebanon this week. The barrage of rocket fire exchange continues on both sides of the border, with Israel intercepting incoming Hezbollah rockets in northern Israel and even in Haifa. Amidst this, the Israeli defense minister has promised to increase security by hitting Hezbollah even harder.
אנחנו מכים קשה מאוד את חיזבאללה לאורך כל השנה ובמיוחד בשבועות האחרונים. נוסיף ונגביר את המאמץ הזה. אנחנו מתכוונים להביא ביטחון ליישובים בצפון ולהחזיר אותם בביטחון, את אלה שעזבו אל הבתים שלהם כפי שצריך, ולהקנות לאלה שנשארו, כמו בעיר צפת, כל מה שצריך. שבת שלום.
Columns of tanks and armored vehicles were spotted on Israel's northern border earlier today, with indications that Israel may launch a ground offensive in Lebanon, just like it did in Gaza. Reports suggest that the Israeli army has even issued a call-up of reservists. Amidst this, the Lebanese foreign minister raised the alarm at the UN General Assembly, calling for urgent international intervention.
يعيش لبنان هذه الأيام أزمة تهدد وجوده ومستقبل شعبه ورفاهيته، وتتطلب تدخلا دوليا عاجلا قبل أن تخرج الأمور عن السيطرة وتتساقط أحجار الدومينو المترابطة ويتحول العجز من احتوائها وإطفائها إلى ثقب أسود يبتلع السلم والأمن والإقليميين والدوليين. فالوضع المتأزم في لبنان ينظر بالأسوأ لكل الشرق الأوسط، في حال استمرار الأمور على حالها بوقوف العالم متفرجاً.
Meanwhile, Israel continued its onslaught on Hezbollah's top commanders, with strikes eliminating head of Hezbollah's aerial force.
For the first time ever, Iran directly attacked Israel from its own territory, firing 300 drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles at us. I have a message for the tyrants of Tehran. If you strike us, we will strike you. There is no place in Iran that the long arm of Israel cannot reach. And that's true of the entire Middle East.
Amidst tensions around a full-blown war, Prime Minister Netanyahu came down heavily on Hezbollah, claiming that this government will go out on all fronts to defend itself from Iran's proxies.
Well, some of the key questions that perhaps we need to answer tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is can this really continue in West Asia? And perhaps is there any end game to this? Professor Nalapat, I want to first begin by asking you the ramifications of a new front that has opened up. Israelis say that it is time to perhaps ensure that the military infrastructure of the Hezbollah is completely crippled. This is the question I've been asking the Israelis, that how suddenly are you really expecting things to change? You've seen what happened in 2006, ending up in a stalemate. We saw this happening in the 1980s. So how exactly are the Israelis suddenly hopeful of the fact that they would be able to tackle the Hezbollah, whose only sole agenda has been to wipe off Israel?
Look, Shravan, I don't think that the Israeli leadership believes it has any alternative. And I would say that channels, if they show what happened on October 7, I think that would be a much better balance, if I may say so, in any discussion. Because what happened in October 7 was very reminiscent of what happened in the late 1930s and 1940s, early 1940s in Germany. I mean, the attempted complete elimination of a people simply because they belong to a different faith. I think, frankly, October 7, we have all seen the visuals, and frankly, the way the terrorists came across the border, the way they attacked the innocent civilian population. If I'm not mistaken, there was a music festival, a Nova music festival. Incidentally, the editor of Sunday Guardian was at the very site of the festival a few days ago, and she just returned to India safely. And but the fact is that this is reminiscent of those horrible days in Nazi-occupied
Professor Nalapat,
Europe.
Are you saying that this was inevitable?
Notably in Germany. And I don't believe Israel believes there's any alternative but to eliminate all those who believe in the extinction of the Jewish state. The Jewish state has faced the Jewish people. There was no Jewish state at that time. That came about as a direct consequence of the Holocaust. And now it's the Jewish state. The extinction of the Jewish state is what Hamas wants, Hezbollah wants, Iran wants, and they are being, frankly, supported by China. Where do you think all the money is coming from? This is something which, frankly, even our friends in Israel are a little reluctant to admit. But the reality of the situation is that China wants to have fires burning all over the place. And now, of course, because of Ukraine, so does Russia, until it makes up its mind as to what to do about Taiwan. So quite frankly, there is no alternative in the mind of the Israeli leadership.
I do understand,
except
Professor
to
Nalapat,
eliminate those who believe in eliminating the Jewish people. That is the state of Israel. Thank you, Shravan.
Well, Professor Nalapat, undoubtedly seeing one of the worst attacks that we have witnessed on 7th of October, third deadliest attack. It is on the expected lines that the Israelis did retaliate. The question that I'm asking is that, is there any end game? To which I would want to take it to General Yaakov Amidor. He's been the former national security advisor, the best person to perhaps answer this question. General Amidor, is there an end game? I've been asking this question to several of my Israeli friends, that can there be an end game? Or are we really looking at a situation where perhaps you're going to only try and stabilize the situation by crippling the Hezbollah? But do you believe that unless you address the biggest threat coming in from Iran, things are not really going to change for you?
There is an end game. In Gaza, it's a very clear one. In Gaza, Israel will smash and destroy all the remnants of Hamas in Gaza. And within a year, Gaza will be totally out of the game. From time to time, Israel IDF will have to go in and to kill those who try to rebuild the capabilities of Hamas. But even now, after the assassination of the head of Hamas in Tehran, Mr. Hania, and the number 2 of Hamas in Gaza, Hamadef, anyone ask the question how Hamas from Gaza will retaliate? The answer is no. Why? They are not relevant anymore to the question regarding their military capability. We have to continue to kill them in Gaza, so within a year that will not be a problem at all. In Lebanon, it is much more complicated. We have 2 different goals. One is to push Hezbollah north of the Litani to the range from which they cannot assault and cannot have another 7th of October attack by Hezbollah. By the way, they had such plans, we know it for sure. So this is one goal, and for that we might bring in our ground forces to kill all the members of Hezbollah south the line which will be demarked by Israel, and then to push them into the north and not let them going down. And we will enforce a 1701 decision of the United Nations, which says exactly that no military force will be in Lebanon other than the Lebanese army.
But General Amidor, but that's a violation in itself. The UN resolution has already been violated, and that is the reason why I believe that Benjamin Netanyahu's government essentially believes that this new front that has been opened was only inevitable.
It violated 3 minutes after it was declared by the United Nations. 3 minutes after the decision was taken in New York, Hezbollah violated it in Lebanon, and no one says a word about it. Now all the world is coming on Israel, why you are doing that and why you are doing that. But years, 1701 was violated by Hezbollah. I didn't see anyone calling Hezbollah and calling Lebanese government and say, guys, you are violating very clear decision of the United Nations, what do you intend to do? But there is another goal of Israel in Lebanon. It's not just to push Hezbollah to the north. It's to eradicate the capabilities of Hezbollah to the level in which after the war, after the ceasefire, Israel will be in a position to attack any facility of Hezbollah in Lebanon. Based on the United Nations decision, that no military organization will exist in Lebanon other than the Lebanese army. No one is forcing it, no one is controlling it, and Israel job of the United Nations, and to destroy Hezbollah facilities in Lebanon in the future. For that, we have in this stage of the operation to destroy the firepower of Hezbollah. That's what we are doing in the last few days. We are bombing military facilities of Hezbollah in which they are storing huge number of missiles and rockets. They had at the beginning of the war more than 100,000 rockets and missiles. Remember the number. I don't think that the Indian army has such number of rockets and missiles. 100,000 rockets and missiles. And we are destroying it. And slowly we are minimizing their ability to use it. Up till now, it's not a full war yet. We didn't bomb Beirut, and they didn't hit Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. But slowly, we are coming to the point in which we will not have any other choice but to go with ground forces, and that will be escalated the situation, no question. By the way, one remark to what you said. We didn't open the front. The front was opened by Hezbollah. It was
I do understand.
At the 8th of October.
General Abidor, I do understand that's the position that the Israelis have been saying, that look here, on the 7th of October, Hezbollah also started firing, and that's the reason why that front was already open.
Yes.
But many would also ask you this question about whether the need of doing it right now, can the world really sustain an ongoing fight? But having said that, General Abidor, I'll take that. I'll also get the West perspective on this and come back to you. I'll request you to stay on with me as I bring in Gabriel Noronha. Gabriel, in terms of the West's position on this entire matter, it seems that you've tried very hard, hoping that there would be a ceasefire, but it perhaps was too much to expect from the Israelis at this point in time. It was an unprecedented attack. To expect that the Israelis are going to accept some sort of a ceasefire was perhaps a little too much. But having said that, is the West essentially also failing? On the one hand, you have the Russia-Ukraine war that's raging on. On the other, now you have the war that has started off with Israel and the proxy war with Iran. Is the United States of America failing in controlling the situation in the West Asia?
I think where the United States has failed in the past few years has been to try to always constrain America's allies rather than to put pressure on the adversary that is actually putting that pressure on. So in 2 years ago, it was applying pressure to Ukraine to try to get Ukraine to come and give concessions to Russia, when Russia just wanted to dismantle the Ukrainian state. And here it's been trying to have Prime Minister Netanyahu back down, give concessions to Hamas for a hostage deal, and then when that's rejected by Hamas, do more concessions and more concessions and more concessions, but not really putting pressure on Iran, not really putting pressure on the Lebanese government. The United States gives about $300 million a year to Lebanon.
The sanctions that the U.S. brought in, Gabriel, the sanctions that were brought in by the United States of America was also not enough. The deterrent that you have been talking about has also completely failed. Somewhere down the line, while you have a conciliatory note that has been struck by the current Iranian president, but the fact of the matter is this, that they are still arming terrorist groups like the Hezbollah.
So the main problem here is that President Biden's approach to sanctions has been very, very weak. They've released numbers of sanctions. They have actually let Iran export about $100 billion in oil, whereas under President Trump in the maximum pressure campaign, Iran declared that it had lost $200 billion in revenue. They had to cut their support to Hamas and Hezbollah. And so this policy that's been advanced by the United States over the last few years has not succeeded in making the Middle East any more peaceful. There's this focus on de-escalation, but that focus is actually achieving the opposite result. And so I think that the United States needs to be putting all our support on Israel, pressuring Hezbollah and pressuring the Lebanese government. No one's talking about the Lebanese foreign ministry and the Lebanese army. They have been allowing a terror group to operate on their soil with impunity. They've been allowing a terror group to launch over 8,000 rockets at Israel, and they have not constrained them at all. There's been no calls from the international community for accountability for the sovereign state that controls Lebanese territory, allowing this to happen. And that's really shocking to me, I think. France in particular turns a blind eye to all the problems in the Lebanese state and blocks accountability for Hezbollah and the European Union. This is what causes Hezbollah to believe that it can just continue firing rockets at Israel with impunity, because it does not face consequences. The only country that puts consequences is Israel.
Dr. Izadi, who's joining us from Tehran right now, there is a clear divide right now even in Iran. You have the hardline conservatives who perhaps are extremely upset with the fact that you've not been able to carry out a direct attack. This at a time that for a very long time you've had Iran essentially depending on Hezbollah to prevent a direct attack from the Israelis. But that has really not worked well for you Dr. Izadi, and somewhere down the line you ought to realize that this policy of the Iranians is only going to destabilize the situation in West Asia.
You know, Israelis attacked and invaded Lebanon in the 1970s, in early 1980s, before Hezbollah was established, was created, before Hamas was established or created. The Israelis have been occupying Palestinian land since 1948. And Hezbollah was created to push the occupiers out. And I'm surprised on Indian television, with the very proud history of opposing colonialism, to hear the type of rhetoric that I've been hearing in the last few minutes. That's really amazing. India was a leading country in opposition to colonialism, and Israel is a settler colonial project. The man that spoke just a few minutes ago in New York is indicted by the International Criminal Court. He's a war criminal. This is not an Iranian professor accusing him of being a war criminal. This is International Criminal Court that has put an arrest warrant. If he wasn't in New York, if the UN headquarters were not in New York, if he was traveling
Dr.
to some
Izadi,
other city,
can I then ask you a specific question?
And defending Israel in that manner and accusing the people who are trying to defend themselves. Israelis have been killing more than 800 people, more than 50 children in the last few days. And having a show
can I ask you, Dr. Izadi,
supporting the
how do you
Israeli
really
line,
explain? Okay.
It's really amazing.
That's the position that you have taken, but that's the position that Iran has also taken for a very long time. Can I then ask you that after the attack that took place on 7th of October, there were certain meetings that took place in Tehran. How do you really describe those very meetings? Because at the end of the day, for many, the Hamas is a terrorist organization. The Hezbollah is a terrorist organization. For you, it may not, but for the world, it is.
It is not. You know, if you're talking about the world, 124 countries, just a few days ago at the United Nations, voted and asked Israel to leave Palestinian territories. That's more than 2/3 of the world population, more than 2/3 of the world countries. We had 14 countries, which did not include India. Indian government is more sensible than you are. That did not include India, that supported the Israeli-American line. So if you're talking about the world opinion, majority of people in the world, including majority of Indians, I think, do not like to see a genocidal regime continuing unleashed, creating mayhem in West Asia. This is unacceptable. Killing civilians on daily basis, killing 20 or 30 children on daily basis for about a year should be really disgusting to anybody. And calling resistance movement, calling people who are defending the land terrorist organizations is really unacceptable.
Professor, I think so we have come a long way. Professor, we have come a long way from this entire argument that has been made about the existence of the Jewish state. What is exactly what you are basically harping on? Professor Nalapat does not seem to really agree.
They could accept two-state solution. All
two-state. Now, as far as the two-state solution is concerned, to which the Israelis have also said that they are open to the idea of a two-state solution can really work out, provided if you stop firing at them. But the fact of the matter is, Professor, I'll request you. I do understand that's the position that you have taken, and that's the argument largely in the garb of that argument. This has gone on for way too long. And somewhere down the line, we have basically tried to legitimize terrorist activities of the Hezbollah as well as the Hamas. Professor Nalapat disagrees with you. Let Professor Nalapat respond to you.
Fighting the British occupiers. If they were
India has supported Palestine.
Okay,
right,
we have. But the question is, this is a global understanding. Professor Nalapat.
Palestine was India, and just a few days ago, Prime Minister Modi met President Abbas in Palestine. and a lot of support in the form of civilian aid has been going there. But the fact of the matter is that India is against terror in all its forms. India has been a victim of terror. And may I point out, in some states in India, for example, in the north of India, terrorists were very active. They were supported from across the border. And what do we find? We find a country that we have consistently argued should be part of an international discussion, Iran taking sides with Pakistan, a state which frankly is sponsoring terror across the border. So please don't lecture us about Palestine. We are for Palestine and for the Palestinian people. They're a wonderful people. They need good education. They need a good industry. None of that will come so long as there are individuals controlling them, or other countries for that matter, who believe that there should be the extinction of the state of Israel. The Jewish people have a right to their homeland, and may I remind you, several Arabs have got
the right to genocide.
Are there
They're
and have got
exercising
equal
genocide,
rights,
and no one in the
any
world,
state
including
or
Israelis,
any
they don't have a
group
right to
that
exercise
calls for the
genocide.
extinction of the Jewish
Professor
state.
Azadi,
Frankly,
Professor Azadi, I'll
that
give you the
is
opportunity to
a
respond.
contravention
I'll give you
of
the proper.
international law, and
Professor Azadi,
India
I'll give you the
cannot support
chance to
it.
respond, but let
India
Professor
supports
Nalapat make his
Palestine
point.
And Israel. It does not support terror in any form whatsoever. And I think our Iranian friend needs to understand how strongly we have stood by Iran against Washington, against London, against all these countries. I have stood by Iran and supported Iran several times in these fora. But to say that, to point fingers at us and say that, oh no, these are terrorists who are committed to a destruction of Israel. And that is not a legitimate objective, may I point out. And India cannot
Israel.
support
I'm not
that
criticizing
objective.
India. India has been actually responsible. They are not one of the 14 countries that opposed the UN resolution the other day. India has a proud history of fighting colonialism, and using Israeli tactics, whether it's India or other places, is not really a good idea.
We have never done so.
Well,
we have never used
Professor, can I please ask you this question? Professor Nalapat, let me address the elephant in the room here. Professor Nalapat, I do understand, as far as India's position is concerned, the idea is not about Professor Nalapat. Can I just bring in the dimension here? Professor Nalapat, I just want to bring in this dimension which has been ignored for a very long time. It's not about India's position on this entire issue right now. That's not the major concern. The concern is, and let's address the elephant in the room. We are talking about, at the end of the day, while there could be a debate over the tactics or the fact that the Iranians essentially feel that this is to fight against the very existence of the Jewish state and what they call colonialism. Professor Yazdi, the fact of the matter is this: a terrorist act will be named as a terrorist act. The fact that on 7th of October, several innocent lives were lost cannot be glorified, while we have seen leaders in Tehran glorifying it. So that also needs to be called out.
The civilians that were killed by the Israelis because they were surprised, and they were shooting at anybody who was alive. So you go back and look at the reports by independent journalists.
That never happened.
The people who have been in a cage for 17 years, the Palestinians who were in a cage for 17 years were under extreme sanctions and blockade. You can't, you put a nation in a cage for 17 years.
That does not justify slaughtering children, burning women alive.
Professor,
history of occupation. Forgetting the apartheid state that we have in Israel. Forgetting
Gabriel wants to respond.
People that have been killed in the last year, and just remembering 7th of October, people who knew that the people who are occupied are suffering, and they had a music festival. This is what the Israelis are saying.
Okay, let me also get it. Gabriel wants to respond.
I think
Gabriel does not agree. Professor Yazadi, Gabriel from...
That's just cruel. And when you exercise cruelty for 76 years, when you exercise a state terrorism for 76 years, the people who are under the rule of a state terrorism are going to lash out, and you shouldn't be surprised. That's why I'm saying that using Israeli tactics is not.
Can I just quickly get in a point from Gabriel?
Yes, I find it truly shocking here that anyone would justify what they did to young girls, raping them over and over and over again before burning them alive. To say that that's because they were suffering, that makes that right.
I don't understand what suffering are they really talking about.
That tells us everything we need to know about Hezbollah, about Hamas, about the Iranian regime, is that they'll make excuses for torturing people and burning them alive. If there are casualties in war, those are because they're military targets. No one should ever take joy in the death of children and the death of any of these people. And yet it seems that you're
Professor Izzati, just allow Gabriel to respond. Allow Gabriel to respond. I'll come back to you.
And burning people alive. That's not civilized behavior. That's barbarian behavior. That's animal behavior. No one should ever justify any type of barbarian activity. And I think that's why a lot of people in India understand that Israel has a right to defend itself against these terrorists. People who murder children and burn people alive deserve to be pushed back.
Somewhere down the line, we need to understand this. You know, I'll also go across to General Amidor here. We need to understand this, that there is what we believe right to defend. While there has been an argument, General Amidor, that the Prime Minister here has been speaking on, that you cannot find any solution on the battlefield. And somewhere down the line, perhaps the Israelis will have to understand that for how long can you really continue, because your neighbors are not going to change. We also live in a hostile atmosphere. The fact that we have the Pakistanis by our side who perhaps are once again fixated with the Kashmir issue. So we do know what it is to be when you're surrounded by a hostile neighbor. But the reality is that it is going to exist. It is going to be there. And that is the reason why the Prime Minister here has always been talking about the dialogue is the only way forward. General Amidor, I want you to respond to some of the allegations that have been leveled for a very, very long time, that perhaps Israelis aren't willing to sit on the negotiating table and look for a solution. The two-state solution for a very long time is still pending.
I see that the guy from Iran afraid to be in the same frame with me. So the Iranians afraid even to be in one frame in Iranian television. So we want to speak about dialogue. Very cynical. With all due respect, the atrocities of Hamas and the fact that Israel was attacked by Hezbollah are not connected at all to the political issue in the Middle East. Hamas declared that he wants to abolish the existence of the State of Israel. It's not about dialogue. It's about the living of the Israelis in the Middle East, about the existence of the State of Israel. Hezbollah is launched more than 8,000 rockets and missiles into Israel in the first 11 months. No Israelis in Lebanon. Lebanon is not under occupation. So what is the excuse for Hezbollah? Hezbollah is not a Palestinian organization. Whom they represent other than Iran. And they are doing it on behalf of Iran to destroy Israel, not connected at all to the political problem that we are facing, negotiating with the Palestinians, not negotiating with the Palestinians. Two-state solution, one-state solution, that is between us and the Palestinians. From Hamas' point of view, Israel does not have the right to exist. We are not speaking about where the borders will be. It's about the existence of Israel. From Hezbollah point of view, Israel should not exist from the beginning. And look, the Iranian guy afraid to be in the frame with me because he doesn't have any claim connected to logical issues. What is the connection between colonialism and Hezbollah attacking Israel from Lebanon, not from Palestine? From Lebanon, and no Israeli soldier is now in Lebanon, might be in the future, if it will be a need. And I want to say something about the Iranians. Look, the Iranians build a ring of fire around Israel. They are controlling Hezbollah, they are controlling the Houthis in Yemen, they are controlling the Shiite militias in Syria and in Iraq, and they built Hamas, they invested huge money in Hamas, and many Hamas members went to Iran to get training and they taught the Hamas how to manufacture weapon system. They provide Hamas with weapon system. Remember the boat that we stopped in the Red Sea a few years ago. Why it is so important? Because at the end of the day, Israel will not have any other choice but to deal with Iran. All these proxies of Iran are fighting Israel from countries near Israel or far from Israel. The Houthis are far, the militias are far, but in Syria, in Lebanon, in Gaza, in the West Bank, Iran is behind all these organizations. Iran kidnapped through Hezbollah Lebanon. You know, they are speaking about the situation in Gaza. Before the war in Gaza, there were more hours of electricity than in Beirut. You know why? Hezbollah is the answer. Hezbollah kidnapped Lebanon and destroyed. The Lebanese had less hours of electricity than the people of Gaza before the war. So they can say whatever they want. Iran is all over the Middle East, killing people.
General Amidor, can I just...
By the way, I was the national security advisor when we helped the Indians to find a cell of Iranian intelligence guy who succeeded to recruit an Indian citizen that he put a bomb in the car of the Israeli embassy.
Gentlemen.
And these are the Iranians. And these Iranians in India, not Iranians in Israel. What excuse to do it in India? So all the lies of Iran should be not taken seriously. Israel will fight those who try to eliminate...
Gentlemen, there is absolutely no doubt about the fact. And I believe this only because for a very long time, perhaps you have ignored what's really happening in the backyard of Tehran. And that needs to be addressed. And if at all there has to be stability in West Asia, one will have to perhaps address the larger concerns that are emerging from this. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on debate number 1. You've had the Israeli as well as the Iranian perspective on this entire matter. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, that remains a bigger concern as things are now spiraling out. Should we focus now to the big laddu controversy, which is still spiraling into a vicious war of words between the TDP and the YSRCP. Today, both Chief Minister Naidu and the former Chief Minister came out with their own press conference to level more allegations. Jagan Mohan Reddy, in fact, was slated to visit the Tirupati temple tomorrow. However, at the end moment, he's actually called off his visit. He claims that TDP is not allowing him to carry out his visit as his party workers were arrested by the police in a vindictive bid to stop him. Meanwhile, Chandrababu Naidu came out lashing out at Jagan Mohan Reddy for making false claims, asking him whether anyone has actually stopped him from visiting Tirupati temple. On the one hand, you have Jagan who refuses to believe the forensic report on the laddus. On the other, you have Chandrababu who says that faith takes the center stage in this round. Where is this issue essentially heading? Was Jagan's plan to visit the temple just a political gimmick? Take a look at this report and then we begin the debate.
Under fire over the alleged adulteration of Tirupati laddus during its term at the helm. Is the YSRCP now playing the victim? During the press conference, Jagan hit out at the TDP and the BJP.
This man, Chandrababu Naidu, knowing very well that the material has been rejected, it did not even enter the premises of the TTD, yet this man callously, or rather intentionally, lies, spreads misinformation, says that this material was consumed and it had animal fat in it.
Jagan claimed that the state police, on the orders of CM Chandrababu Naidu and his son Nara Lokesh, have started issuing notices to party leaders.
The notices say that the ex-Chief Minister Y.S. Jagan Mohan Reddy is visiting Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanam, and that program does not have the approval of the government, and if any Karyakarta participates in this program, cases would be booked on them.
Meanwhile, in a big development amid the furor around the adulteration row, the state DGP informed that a case was registered over the alleged use of animal fat in the ghee that goes into making of the Tirupati laddus. Jagan also went on to question the integrity of the NDDB report.
So-called confidential report from NDDB Gujarat is released from Telugu Desam Party office on September 19th. And even in that report, there is a disclaimer which clearly says that this report is not accurate.
Meanwhile, raising fears of a further escalation in the political slugfest ahead of Jagan's earlier scheduled visit, which is now cancelled, the ruling TDP and BJP were adamant that the former CM signs an undertaking declaring his faith before entering the temple precincts.
Hey, omnipresent, please come out as Lakshmi Narasimha Swami. Please come out as Ugra Narasimhavatara. And please put an end to all these demon acts. And people who have taken up these demon acts. What are you doing? Please wake up. This is your identity. If not today, never we can get united. We need to stand up to protect this nation, to protect the Sanatan.
With the political temperature rising over the Tirumala Laddu, the big question is, when will the former CM stop playing the deflection card?